Hey guys, what's going on? Corbin from Circa 2020 here. So today, many people have asked, and I'll be honest with you, I've shot this video before, but I just didn't love the angle and the way it was, so there were some things that I wanted to redo. So we're going to redo it, and I am sorry for the brief absence of a couple weeks, but, you know, it is what it is. Sometimes you have to do what you have to do, and it's archery season and we got a lot of stuff going on here. So we're gonna go over how to build a lower receiver, how I like to build a lower receiver, some of the tools you need. Everybody has wanted to see this video or see some assembling, so this is for you. Now, there's gonna be some stuff left out. I'm probably not gonna say the B word. I'm probably not gonna say assemble besides right now, because the algorithm for YouTube doesn't really like when people do this sort of thing and post the video, and I don't want to get my patties slapped, but I want to be able to go over with you guys what we're doing. So I'm hoping that you guys can read the board here. I'll slide the board over. That board is kind of it is what I like to do, the process, if you will. Let me move some of these other lowers out of the way here. We got some blanks and some other things going on here. Make sure we're not going to cut into the lower. So right here we have an Anderson stripped lower receiver. This comes with the logo, the Don't Tread on Me logo. Pretty cool. We're going to use all brand new Anderson parts. Now, people say what they want about Anderson, and you know, I will tell you this: Anderson is the #1 volume manufacturer of lower receivers. They also seem to have a pretty good pedigree outside of, how do I want to word this? Outside of your normal joker on Facebook, they seem to do pretty well. There are some guys on a couple groups in Facebook that don't think they're a great quality piece, but I seem to think they're pretty nice. What I do like about Anderson's lower parts kit, and I will plug them on this, for a long time I used to like the unbranded AR lower parts kit, which, you know, is just a loose bag, all mil-spec stuff, but I never had a problem with any of it besides the roll pins for the bolt catch. So I always thought it was, you know, just okay. Well, Anderson lays everything out really nicely. So if we go ahead, we're going to jump right into it, guys. And by the way, subscribe. 93% of you who watch my videos aren't subscribed. You know we bring good content. I know I haven't brought a lot in the last week and a half, 2 weeks, but it's archery season. We finished up our racing season, had a lot going on, but we will get rolling with the content pretty soon. And I have some hunting videos. We did have a harvest. And I have some hunting stuff that I just have a ton of footage, and it's going to take a lot of time for me to edit that down. So I got a lot going on. So #1 on the list here is if you can, grab yourself a screwdriver with a magnet tip or magnetize it. This isn't going to work like I want it to. Let me grab this Allen wrench. This has been on here for a while. There we go. And leave a tool in your magnet tray. That can help out a lot, because to pick some of these parts up and to hold on to some of the springs, having a magnetized, even just a piece of steel that's been in a magnet tray for a while, can help out a lot. So the first thing we do is the magazine release button, the catch, the spring, because once we get that done, we can lock it onto the Real Avid Smart Fit AR-15 lower vise block, and we're pretty much good to build for the rest of it. So you go ahead and slide your magazine catch in there. There's a hole that guides it in. Slide your spring over, There's a couple different buttons you can get. Obviously, there's really Gucci buttons out there, but the buttons that come with this don't have a sleeve. It's just threaded right in. I do have some of these that have sleeves on the back, and I don't know if I have one in here. But anyways, they have like another sleeve that pops out that guides into the spring, and it is definitely a little bit easier to get everything rolling on the first part of this, because it is somewhat easy to get the threads started cockeyed without that, because you're just kind of working against a lot of spring pressure, and basically you just need to get it started. Get a couple threads on. Then what I do, make sure I'm in the picture here, I turn this all the way down till it almost touches the lower. Then I will take a tool, this Allen wrench will work fine, I'll place it in the hole that I'm working in, I'll push that through, get a good nice tight hold, and then thread this in. You'll start to feel where the threads start to tighten up. That's usually pretty good. Bring it out one time, check it. As long as you're flush or pretty flush, it's gonna work really well to start. You can always adjust that later, but you heard it, it clicked in. We are good to go. Now, the cool thing about this Smart Fit, oh, geez. I was looking at something over here I wanted to grab quick. But the cool thing about this Smart Fit lower vise block is once it's in, we're not going to take it out of this vise block for the remainder of the process. So they have this really cool thing that no matter what lower you're working on, whether it's an 80 you've milled, or if it's a Radian or an Anderson, or you know, the cheapest of the cheap or the most expensive, no matter what AR-15 related lower, it's gonna lock in to the point where this bad boy is, I can rip the whole table down, it's not going anywhere, it's not gonna move a lick. So right away, number one, magazine release catch done. So now look at this fancy board I got for you guys. I did it just for you. Next up is the bolt catch. Now here's where good tools come into play. Guys, I'm being serious. I don't know how else to tell you. Tools for this job. I never am going to be the guy who tells you that you need to go out and spend tons of money on tools, but this specific job, it is worth spending the 10, 15, 20 extra dollars, whatever it ends up being, to get yourself the right set of punches to do this job. And I don't know where in the heck anything's at right now, so bear with me 1 second. I need to grab, I think it's my 2 millimeter or 2.5 millimeter Allen. I keep grabbing the same size. It's just a lick too big. This should be it right here. It's still the same size. My goodness, guys. Who screwed my head on today? This one should be it. I always keep this Allen that I don't use for anything else except for that. It's pretty tight to the bolt catch area, but there's a better way to do it. You can get yourself what is an 095 or 094 piece of welding wire. Works really well for this this specific job here. So we're gonna grab our tool that's been magnetized. I don't know if it has enough left to get that out, so we'll just pull this out by hand and I'll stick that back in so she gets a nice charge on her. Bolt catch number 2. So the bolt catch slides in here, works on this axis. It has a spring and a detent, and that's what your follower comes up and hits and locks your magazine back on empty. And that's also what you can do to lock it back for, you know, originally charging the rifle or whatever else you want to do. You're also going to need a spring. Let me grab a nice white something here. This will work, because I want to be able to lay these small parts on here so you can see exactly what we're working with when we're working with it. And you're gonna need this plunger. Now I wanna make sure, yeah, this should be just fine. Okay, so here's what you need to do your bolt catch. You need your bolt catch, you need your spring, and you need your detent. So the first thing you wanna do here is slide your detent with that little dowel end, the little follower, the little guide, in on that spring. There's a hole down here. Right underneath these ears, there's a hole in the lower. It slides right in. Push it back in a couple times. It should kind of, the spring kind of seats in there for the half. Works pretty well. Next thing we're gonna do is slide that bolt catch in. This is a nice bolt catch that comes with the kit. And I think it does improve the process here, because what I will say, if it's your first time, you see why this tool is here. If it is your first time building an AR lower, assembling an AR lower, I said I wasn't going to say it, but I did. Damn it. This is probably one of the harder jobs that you're going to run into, depending on the lower and the parts kit that you have. This is where it pays to spend the extra money on the parts kit and the lower. Running the unbranded lowers, I had some issues where the roll pins or the lower was off tolerance, and the roll pins were just did not want to go in. It would go in the first, it'd go through the bolt catch like butter, it would hit the second ear and stop. Some people say it's an alignment issue. With this Allen wrench, I don't think it can be, but you know, it is what it is. People are people, and we're going to show you just how easy it is when you have the right stuff. So you back this Allen wrench out just until it's behind the hole here on this ear, 2 millimeter. You have specific tools for this job as well. The first one, you also need a roll pin. I forgot about that, but you do need your bolt catch roll pin. From Real Avid, they make master grade AR-15 builders kits. Man, I am going to get flagged for all this build talk, but they make this roll pin punch that's flat-sided, so you can stick it up against the lower and not have any worries about making a mess on the side of your lower. And they also have the roll pin punch that you can also do something with, or finish it off with here, that has the little tit on the end that goes into the roll pin that won't crush the roll pin, yada yada yada. If you guys can see back here, I hope, I do have another set of roll pin punches. You don't have to buy this set. You can buy a set of roll pin finishing punches and have tons of them. I did that anyways, and you can also get different kinds of starters. I can show them to you here as well. If I know where they're sitting. I'm in the middle of cleaning out my racing stuff for the year, so some of my, here, I'm gonna bring this bin out as well, because this bin has more parts, so I can show you the differences of some of the parts and some of the other tools. So you can get a set of roll pin starter punches like these that are hardened tool steel. They're really nice. They're just a little short for this job. But if you don't want to go out and buy those, you can buy that set, you know, that set, whatever. You don't have to buy these, but these are designed for the job and they make it really easy. So we're going to take this roll pin. It's inside here. You see it. Ooh, magnet. You see it. We're going to guide it in the hole. The other thing that you can do, some guys agree with this, some guys don't. I don't give a shit. I'm telling you how I do it. I will take a little bit of oil, and almost every part that I put in, the magazine catch is an exception because it doesn't really need oil. I will put a little bit of oil on just for assembly. So now we'll take our jeweler's hammer. See how that's backing that wrench out? That's how easy it should go in, guys. You shouldn't have to pound on it. Just with that jeweler's hammer, I was able to get that started. Now, we should be able to get to the second ear here. The finishing punch. Got to remember to move my fingers with the punch. Flush on this side. I'll probably knock it in just a touch more. There we go. Guys, it should be that simple, okay? It really should be. That's how you do it. Nice and easy. Put your punches away. You're good to go. Now, one of the hardest jobs of doing a lower is done with the right tools, with the Anderson lower, the Anderson parts kit. I will tell you this, if you do match up your companies, if you do buy, because I got a lot of these bad boys, if you do buy an Anderson lower, go out and get yourself the Anderson parts kit. If you get an Aero lower, get an Aero parts kit. If you get a Radiant lower, get their, because they're designing their parts kit off of the spec that they currently have. So that is the best way to do it. So now bolt catch, guys, done. Moving right along. Next job here, the reason we have to do it like this is because you just do. So the lower trigger shoe, you kind of have to have set, especially with this specific lower parts kit, in order to do the safety. So the lower trigger set, we have your lower trigger, the lower assembly part of the trigger shoe, the trigger. I hope you guys can see where I'm laying these parts. I think so. GoPro's pretty wide. You have your catch, you have your trigger spring, and you will need 2 more parts. You need a roll pin and you need a spring. Now the spring that's designed for this job is different than some of the other springs. Some lower parts kit comes with the same spring for that and for this. Good ones come with, they're not the same. So the reason is because this spring, you probably can't see it from here, but is slightly larger on one end. The last coil is slightly larger. The reason being is because it will really fit tight down in here. And when it snaps in, you don't have to worry about that sucker flying out. It's not coming out. So there's a little slot in the trigger shoe for it. You'll see it. It's good. And then this is always like one of my arch nemesis is trying to get these springs on the trigger, but these haven't been too bad on these Anderson kits. I've used probably 10 or 15 different kits in my life, and I will tell you that the Anderson kit seems to work pretty good. So this is how it's going in the lower, where this, you know, this is your spring orientation because this sits in the lower and that's what gives you your trigger spring tension. Okay, here's your catch area and your spring, and that little notch sits in there and the roll pin goes through the whole deal. So we'll kind of guide this down in. Find out where, oh, first time that's happened in a while. The spring popped down through. Nifty. All right, so one thing that I normally like to do in this situation is I like to take a punch, a long punch. I like to come through one side here, get it started on one side, and then try to watch what's happening in here. There, now it's in. The reason I like to do that is it does help keep everything aligned. It doesn't always work perfectly, don't get me wrong. It doesn't. I will not put any oil on these, just maybe whatever's residually on my hand, because you really don't want these pins moving if they don't have to. So we will take our brass hammer here, and that's kind of normal. So I'm just going to do it by hand, where we just kind of feed everything through here. There it is. And then sometimes you can wiggle around on the bottom of the shoe and you can drop that pin in. Make sure you're flush on both sides. Lower trigger area is done. Next, we're going to rotate the lower assembly like that. Reason being, now we have a grip to do, and then along with the grip screw, obviously, your lock washer, your grip detent spring and the safety detent spring and the safety detent. Now, there's a couple detents in these lower kits. Here's a takedown detent. Here's a safety detent. Think of it this way if you need to remember. The safety detent looks like a mini bullet because it's the safety, because when you flip the safety, bullets come out. So it looks literally just like a miniature shell. Pretty cool. The spring on the safety is similar to a takedown takedown pin spring, a detent spring for a takedown pin, but the safety is usually a little fatter, a little stockier. And one way you can always tell that is because look at the hole that it goes in, little fat hole there. So you can just make sure it threads in and it looks like it's pretty close to the size of what it needs to be. Don't get me wrong, in a pinch, I may have once used one of those takedown spring that I cut down just a hair just to make it work, but I don't like to admit that. I don't like to admit that sometimes we have to do things the wrong way, but it happens. Oh, here was this magazine catch that I was telling you about earlier. So the front looks the same, but the back has this extended thread piece. Those ones make it a lot easier. I'm not going to BS you, they make it a lot easier. So you have your Allen. Best thing you can do is get your grip almost 100% ready to go. Take your detent. Whoops, we need a safety. I'm getting so far ahead of myself, I never grabbed the safety. Now, this is not an ambidextrous, okay? So it's only going to go in one way. So I'm going to feed it in. I like to start all of mine on fire. Try to get it locked on fire. Your safety detent, I'm not going to move the camera around. It goes in a little hole here, over here by the lower, or on the right side of the lower, right in line with where this grip screw comes out. And then your spring goes up and pushes on that bad boy. And then you try to hold it with that tension while you fumble around with the grip screw. And then try to find the hole for the grip screw. And hope that this doesn't all explode in your hand while you're fumbling. You mess up with the grip screw once, maybe twice sometimes. What I'd like to do is get a little bendy light for this job. This is one of the only jobs where I think it helps to be able to see in a weird spot. Some people will literally flip the lower upside down, which isn't a bad idea. I think just for the interest of me not screwing this up and having to look for a spring, we're going to do it like that. Now, one thing that I do sometimes, some people won't agree with this, who watch this and who are experienced builders. Some people will not agree. With the unbranded kits, I haven't had the problem with the Anderson kits, but with the unbranded kits, I used to knock the real sharp end of the detent out because it would really make the safety work hard for a while until that wore in. I didn't really like that. So right here should be fire, safe. See how it's a little stiff? They have a real sharp end on the end of that detent, very sharp. What I used to do is just take like 100 grit sandpaper, put it in a pair of pliers, and just rub it on there a couple times just to round off that tip a little bit, and it would make it work a lot smoother from the start. Now see there, it's already starting to work pretty good. Like I said, the Anderson kits are a little bit better than what the unbranded kits are, so I'm pretty happy with that. And now that that's in, we can go ahead. Oh, hey, look at this. We missed a check mark. So the shoe's done, the safety, the grip, the detent's done. Now we are on to, if you can read, the upper trigger assembly or the hammer. Nobody ever really calls it the upper trigger assembly. I'm probably the only person, but when I do a class or I am teaching somebody, I like to use lower pin and upper pin for reference. And the reason for that is because if you do it all, you can do it all at once, don't get me wrong, but I like to do it in this order. You know, magazine release, bolt catch, lower trigger, safety, grip, detent, and then come back and do the hammer. I think it just keeps a lot of the mess out of the way while you're working. All right, so next, the hammer. This is the part that comes up and smacks the firing pin. Your spring sits right here, okay? So you got to get that in. You don't really have to worry about hurting these springs. You can't really hurt it, all right? Now, when you insert this in, the first pin that we put in is the axis for which this spring works. So you stick it in behind that pin and you lower it down into place. Now, here is where this comes in handy once again, where you can set this right on the edge. Whoops, sorry. You guys are going to be shaky now. I apologize. And I'm just going to work this in kind of like that. Once I get that on an axis, I like to actually lock that back. For some reason, I feel like it works better when you lock that back. It allows you to move it on that axis a little bit better. So now we'll start backing this out. And backing this one in at the same time. That's how it's supposed to work. Push it right through, and then you can kind of eyeball where you need to go with the hammer, down, over, up, left, right, whatever. Done. I like to stick something right here. Boom. Everything works pretty good. Make sure that when we cock and go to safe, that it doesn't fire. Go back to safe, fires good. Their hammer's really nice. The trigger finish is really nice. I really like this kit. I don't want to keep giving Anderson shameless plugs because I'm not a shameless plug guy normally, but I like their stuff. It's not bad. All right, so next we can do the trigger guard. Anderson sends a pretty basic flat trigger guard with. I like the flat trigger guard. The only reason some people don't like the flat trigger guard, if you are using gloves, it doesn't give you a lot of clearance between the bottom of the grip or the bottom of the trigger and this, and some people have said that their gloves do get caught in there. I think it's, I don't know. I don't see how that happens, but you know, to each their own. Oh, real quick. A lot of trigger guards are going to have the front on the lower will not have two roll pin holes. So the first one will just have a spring loaded detent or pin basically. So you basically just stick it up, you know, push that pin in with your fingernail or a punch, whatever you need to use. I can usually get it with the nail. Clips into place, and now that just kind of dangles there while you grab the larger of the two roll pins that comes with your kit. So you grab that roll pin out. It's cold out here in the garage. Larger roll pin, and now is when you can use your other roll pin starter punches that you bought under my recommendation. I actually bought these. Remember, I talked a lot of crap about the Amazon stuff on the AR Tools video. But I actually bought these on Amazon, and I really like these punches. I don't have one that's the perfect size for this starter, but it works better than nothing. So basically, I like to just kind of try to hold it in place there. You could technically try to hold it better with, you know, a bigger punch here. That's probably way too big. Yep. So we'll come back with this one. Come in, go across. That should put us in the right direction. Should just be able to walk that bad boy 90% of the way in. Look at that. Like butter. So now this is buttered up against, can't go any further. Sweet. So now we grab, I believe this is going to be a 530 seconds. It may be smaller, but we'll use the 530 seconds so we don't split it. Flush. Not even quite out there. So we'll tap this in. We'll give it just another hit. Pretty flush all the way around. So there we are, guys. We've got the guard on. So now what we're down to here is takedown pins. The rear takedown pin is very easy. The front takedown pin, however, is not as easy. Now, there's a couple ways you can tackle this if you don't want to buy the tool that I'm about to show you. And gosh, where is the tool? Oh boy. All right. So I'm going to keep blabbing while I look for this tool because I really got to oh, there it is. Okay. So this tool is from Real Avid. Again, if anybody from Real Avid is watching, hook a brother up with something because I'm trying to sell you guys some tools, not because I care, but because I really genuinely do believe that you guys make decent stuff. So this is their front takedown pin tool. Now, for a long time, I did it this way, where I would grab my biggest roll pin starter punch, or any kind of punch would work. A takedown pin size punch would probably work. Ooh, this punch would work really well for it. So to demonstrate, I'll kind of show you this. I just got these hardened steel punches, just basic punches. I love them for just general stuff. Where I would take it, I would feed the detent spring and the detent down in. They are under a lot of pressure. I've lost plenty over the years. And I'd feed them down in, pinch them in with a small flathead screwdriver like this. I'd keep them down in there, get this out over, pull a screwdriver out. Great. I would then grab my front takedown. I would butt it up against, and I would just bring it basically through and hope that it didn't slip. That's a pretty good method, and you can use that if you want. But there is definitely some use to getting a tool like this. So we'll show you, here's our detent spring. Again, here's the tiny detent, and it looks like they may have given me an extra detent here. I think I got an extra, because I got one more. I think I got an extra detent with the package. That's cool. So I'm going to throw that in my detent bin. Get a bin, guys, get a bin. Get a bin, because then when you come up with extra stuff or you tear some lowers apart, you can just put all those parts together and you have many. If your buddy needs one, if you need one, take it to the range. If you lose something, trigger pin falls out, whatever the case, you're able to take care of whatever you need on the fly. Now, normally in this process, I do like to wear gloves, but I only have 2 gloves left and I'm Cerakoting tomorrow, so I'm saving them for that because I don't really feel like running to the store. So this part here, dun dun dun, cool tool. All right, so what the idea is we take our spring, make sure everything's lined up, feed the spring in, take the detent, feed the detent in, and there you go. And then you rotate this up. You can take the plunger out, and then you grab your takedown. I do like to put a little bit of oil, just a drop is fine, in the rail where the detent rides, just to help that detent break in a little better. So we're going to take this, in, boom. Guys, you can't screw it up. You can't screw that up. There it is. The reason I like to put oil in is, boom, look at that. Those detents are sharp, but within seconds, she is running smooth. Seriously, guys. I think this tool was $9. Now, yeah, you can say it's $2 worth of plastic and, you know, 50 cents worth of a dowel. It is what it is, guys. They thought of it. It's a hell of a nice tool. It's good. So, here's where we get into stuff that your lower receiver doesn't have. So the rest of the parts that we have is another takedown pin, detent spring and detent. And we also have our buffer detent and our buffer detent spring. Those are what we have left, and that's all back here, but that all works off of one system. So if we want to finish this, you will have to have your stock, your castle nut, your buffer tube. Really, you just need your stock, your castle nut, and your buffer tube. If you don't have your buffer spring and your buffer yet, that's okay, because we're not trying to fire the gun right now. We're just putting it together. So off the parts shelf here at Circuit 2020, we grabbed our carbine length buffer system with just your basic buffer plate. Oh no. I do like these black springs. I think they look really nice versus just a regular, you know, like tungsten color. I love the black buffers with the clear heads. They look really nice. And just a regular old black buffer tube, guys. Oh, these here are Colt True 6, they call them, I think, from Colt. These are actually a Colt buffer system. Now, I don't think it's really Colt, to be honest with you. I think Colt just branded a, you know, a generic lower system. Hey, you guys are letting me forget. So next we're on to the buffer tube, detent, rear takedown. But that also comes, well, we'll do that. We're not worried about the stock right now, but this is a Mission First Tactical, you know, minimal stock, which I like very much. So how all this works, maybe I will show you a little bit about what's going on. So this hole here is where your detent goes in first, then your spring opposite of the front because it works forward, but you have to have your takedown pin in. So before we do that, we drop just 1 drop of oil in the takedown pin track, stick that in, drop the spring down in, or the detent, I'm sorry, then the spring. Make sure everything is seated correctly. It's really important that that gets to be down as far as it can, and there is a reason why. You want to make sure that your takedown, you put some pressure on it and it finds where it wants to be. And I can explain why here in a second. All right, just that little 1/16 of an inch of that track, making sure everything's in the right track, can help you with this spring getting in a little bit easier so you don't bend the spring. I've bent plenty of them doing this job. I tell you what, since this is kind of a directional thing, I will do this backwards, even though it's going to be totally backwards of what I normally do. So you grab your buffer tube, you grab your castle nut, your big opening goes to the rear for your wrench. The little tiny ones here in the front are for staking. And if you don't know what staking is, we're going to do that. So hang on 1 second, we'll get there. So make sure your castle nut is pretty much as back as far as you can get it. Make sure your buffer end plate here is on, back as far as you can get it. Make sure that the embossed part is forward to lock into that area. And then you need to make sure you take your spring, insert it down in your buffer detent area, grab your buffer detent, put that down in, make sure that kind of wants to stay kind of where it needs to. These have a little bit longer spring than what I normally work with, so they have been kind of a pain in the butt to work with, but it is what it is. You want to kind of try to keep this back so it doesn't bend the spring. Some guys like to And I tell you what, I think I'm gonna do it that way just for the sake of getting this spun in a decent amount of time here. So the leading edge of the buffer system, of this buffer tube, is what works on this detent. Oh, I was wondering what we were stuck on there. What I don't like about this tube, let me grab you a tube quick because I do want to explain this a little bit better. I think I have one up here that's pretty much the same thing that's been sandblasted. I bumped the camera again. Sorry, guys. So this, let me grab another. When you put that buffer detent in and you spin this in, it's sitting and it's sitting up, and you have to push this down because when it finally comes to rest, it sits on this shelf, and this little nipple is what keeps your buffer from flying out. I like the ones that have a notch in here where this sits in a notch. I actually even thought about using my Dremel and a bit and creating my own notch because it helps to keep everything clocked correctly. It puts less stress on that buffer end plate just all the way around. I like that, the ones that have that notch a little bit better. But if you get the notch off at all, then it's not going to be straight. So I would rather just try to make it straight on my own. All right, so now we need to rotate it just a hair because we got to take and put the spring in, feed the spring in, and then get this straightened up. And now try to work with a tool here to get the spring to where it's on that plate correctly. Pull that plate in, hold it with all your life while you hand tighten the castle nut in place. Okay, so stop. Don't grab your armor's wrench and yank that son of a bitch down yet, okay? Make sure that everything is straight. Even without that notch, your end plate should work in, it should work with this notch and locking into the lower, and it should keep everything 100. The problem is when you get on it with an armor's wrench and you yank, sometimes that's just an aluminum tube and it's a steel plate. So that steel will just go right through that aluminum and get it off center, and there's nothing you can do about it. So you got to be careful here. It doesn't need a lot of pressure, guys. This is what I do on my castle nuts because we're going to show you how to stake here in a second. Make sure your wrench is in all the way around. Mine's not, and I'm going to slip and make a mess. You can put quite a bit of torque on with a wrench this big. So it's basically just kind of, if you're really mechanical and you know what like 25 foot-pounds feels like, that's all you need to give it, guys. It's not going to come loose because we're about to stake it. So how I like to stake, they make good staking tools, yes. Everybody knows that. And people can say what they want about this, but I use these center punches and I have had great luck with these center punches. So we're gonna give it, I don't like having to stake it right on top, but it is what it is. That's where it wants to be. So that's where it's gonna be. Tiny little metal hammer here. You don't need much because this is a soft steel. So you wanna make sure basically, first you're just hitting directly in the meat of that plate and just getting some metal, getting an indentation so you can work, and I keep getting in my own light. I need to replace these bulbs above me on my workbench. They're going out. Okay, so there we got a nice little peen going. So now we can move that metal, and there's a pretty good stake. It's staked into that. So that castle nut has a little relief in it. And what that relief is for is so you can move metal from the plate, literally beat it just like that, put a dent in it, and move metal into that stake. area. So I'm gonna do one more right here. First, I'm gonna go straight in. Make sure I got myself something good to bite on. And then I'm gonna just slowly keep working that metal over, making sure I don't slip until I have that so tight on that lower I won't be able to pull it off. Until you get a really good steak where that metal is moved over and that nut is, even if it wants to come loose from the low torque that we put on it, it's not going to be able to move. It is locked in place. We're good to go. Your buffer detent is correct. So now next thing you do is you take your buffer spring. I like to find out which side of the spring really wants to work with the buffer best. That one seems best there. Take this, drop this hammer back so it's out of the way. Feed that up over. Find your flat edge, stick it right over. Buffer's done, guys. Done. Now, we can take our stock. These have been a little bit of a pain for me, these Mission First Tactical guys. Man, they have been a pain. So, what I have had to do, unfortunately, is grab this thing with a set of dikes and really pull down on it. There we go. Just try not to scar it up too much. It's just a really tight fit with the coating that's on this buffer, but it's better than being sloppy. There is no play on that stock. None. Guys, we are... Hang on. Yeah, there we go. Now it's locked in. We're good to go. That is how you assemble a lower. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, if you want to reach out, let me know. If you want, I'm not going to link any of this stuff because, like I said before, YouTube and the gun linking is like oil and vinegar. So we'll be back with some more stuff really soon, guys. Please subscribe. I'm gonna finish the giveaway this week, and that'll be done Sunday. I went another week with it, but on Sunday it'll be ready to go, and we will get that finished up for you. So we got a completely working lower here. Glad you guys could come along. Really excited to put the rest of this thing together. We will do an upper video next. You know, one of these guys, an upper receiver next. And then we will, you know, maybe stick them together and go out and shoot one that we built together. So, Corbin from Circa 2020, we'll see ya.